Pam Bondi walked into that hearing room like she owned the place. 2 hours later, she walked out having done something almost no Trump official has pulled off before. She made Merrick Garland look good, and that's not easy to do. Let's talk about what really happened Wednesday. Not the spin, not the press releases, the raw footage. Because if you only watched the clips the White House posted, you missed the part where Bondi got dismantled by her own side. Here's the truth. Bondi came in swinging. She left bleeding. And the worst cuts came from Republicans. Start with Epstein. Jayapal does something smart. She asks Epstein survivors to stand. Women who were children when they were trafficked. Women whose private information DOJ leaked. Women Bondi just apologized to. Then Jayapal asks Bondi to apologize again for the redaction failures.
To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hand. Still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice.
This is Bondi's moment. Easy layup. I'm sorry, we'll fix it. Next question. She pauses. And then she blames Merrick Garland. Think about that. She had victims behind her, real people, sitting in silence, waiting for one sentence. Instead, she served them a 4-year-old grievance about a man who hasn't been Attorney General for 60 days. That's not strategy. That's instinct. And her instinct isn't to protect victims. It's to protect Trump. The survivors sat there, unaddressed, unacknowledged, for the rest of the hearing. And Bondi never turned around. Not once. Here's where it gets worse. Thomas Massie, Republican, from Kentucky. Not a Democrat. Not a squad member, a guy who votes with Trump 80% of the time. Massie asks about Wexner. Now, Wexner isn't charged with a crime. His lawyers say he cooperated. But here's what matters. In the Epstein files, the government redacted Wexner's name specifically where it appeared next to allegations of criminal conduct. Not everywhere, just there. Bondi says they unredacted it in 40 minutes. Massie doesn't blink. Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed. That's the line. That's the moment. A Republican congressman telling the sitting attorney general on camera that he caught her. And she called him a failed politician. Failed politician. To a guy who's been elected 8 times. Bondi wasn't answering questions. She was collecting enemies. And she forgot that in a committee room, the members hold the gavel. Jordan had to remind her 3 times. 3 times that the time belonged to Congress, not her. 3 times. Then there's Becca Balint. Bondi brings up antisemitism, says Balint voted against a resolution, tries to paint her as soft on hate crimes. Balint is the granddaughter of a Holocaust victim. She stands up. She's shouting, "Are you serious?" And then she walks out. That's not a gotcha. That's a career prosecutor who didn't read the room, or the biography, or the basic hearing prep memo. You don't attack a Jewish member on anti-Semitism when her grandfather died in the camps. You just don't. And if you do, you've lost the moral authority to ever bring up the subject again. Now watch what happens when the attacks stop. Swalwell, Democrat. Usually the guy Trump witnesses yell at. He doesn't ask about
Attorney
Epstein.
General Bondi.
Doesn't ask about redactions. He asks about death threats, his family, his kids. Is DOJ investigating? Bondi's voice changes. None of you should be threatened. None of your children should be threatened. No deflection. No Garland mention. No Trump tribute. Just an answer. It lasted 45 seconds. It was the only time all day she sounded like an attorney general. So what was the strategy? You already know. Audience of one. Every Garland dig, every clock point, every washed-up loser lawyer, that's not for the committee. That's for Mar-a-Lago. That's for the clip that gets played on Fox that night. But here's the problem. The audience of one isn't the only audience anymore. 60% of Americans disapprove of Trump on immigration. That's the NBC poll that dropped the morning of the hearing. 60%. 3-1 on Epstein. Crime numbers are down, but nobody feels safe. Deportations are up, but nobody feels protected. And the administration just tried, and failed, to indict 6 sitting Democratic lawmakers. That story broke 24 hours before Bondi testified. 24 hours. She walked into a building that was already on fire. And instead of bringing hoses, she brought gasoline. Here's what Bondi didn't do. She didn't say, "We messed up the redactions, we're fixing it. Here's how." She didn't say, "The Epstein files are being reviewed. We'll release what we can. Here's the timeline." She didn't say, "Political violence is rising. Threats to members are real. Here's what we're doing about it." She didn't say any of that. Instead, she called a Democratic congressman a liar. She told another to focus on crimes in California. She pointed at a clock and said, "Your time is up," to a woman asking about child victims sitting 10 feet away. That's not law enforcement. That's performance art. And here's what the algorithms picked up. Search Pam Bondi hearing right now. The top results aren't her opening statement. They aren't Jordan defending her. They're Massie saying, "Catching you red-handed." They're Balint walking out. They're survivors standing in silence while Bondi blames Joe Biden. YouTube doesn't care about talking points. YouTube cares about retention. And retention comes from conflict, confrontation, and moments where power shifts visibly. That's why the Massie clip has 3 times the views of Bondi's opening, because audiences know when someone's losing. And Wednesday, Bondi lost. Here's the bottom line. Pam Bondi has done this before. She's been combative her whole career. That's not the story. The story is that combativeness without competence doesn't work anymore. You can't outshout a fact. You can't outlast a clip. You can't call a member a failed politician when the footage shows you fumbling a question about a dead sex offender and a living victim. The Trump administration has a problem right now. Not just with Democrats, with reality. Epstein survivors don't care about Merrick Garland. Voters don't care about the stock market in a judiciary hearing. And Republican voters? They care about the files. They want to see them. And Bondi didn't bring them. She brought insults. So here's what you need to watch next. Massie isn't done. Neither is Kana. The unredaction issue isn't going away because Bondi called it a red herring. Red herrings don't get caught in 40 minutes. Redactions do. The Swalwell moment, that brief, genuine exchange, is going to get replayed every time Bondi claims she's above partisanship. Because for 45 seconds she was. And then she went back to the script. And Balint? She'll be back. And next time Bondi won't have the element of surprise. One last thing. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Bondi spent about 3 of them on defense. She landed a few punches. She dodged a few questions. She made Jordan tell her to be quiet 3 times. But she never answered the core question. Why should the public trust the Justice Department with the Epstein files when the Justice Department can't even protect the victims' names? She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because the answer isn't in talking points. It's in the work. And Wednesday, the work didn't matter. The performance did. That's why this hearing matters. Not because Bondi lost her temper, because Bondi lost her purpose. And in a room full of survivors, that's the one thing she couldn't afford to lose.